Hi, it's Mike with AskTractorMike.com. Got viewer mail today from Vernon, who's having trouble with slip clutches on his MX6 cutter. I think we can help him out today. Let's get started. So the letter reads, I bought an MX6 John Deere bush hog, and the first time I used it, in less than 30 minutes, it burned up the clutch. So I took it to the dealer, had it fixed. The dealer said I had it too low to the ground, So the letter reads, I bought an MX6 John Deere bush hog, and the first time I used it, in less than 30 minutes, it burned up the clutch. So I took it to the dealer, had it fixed. The dealer said I had it too low to the ground, which is not true because it was set at about 2.5 inches. I'm using a John Deere 5085E to pull it. After I got it back from the shop, I hooked it up again, and less than 30 minutes later, it burned up again. The dealer keeps saying I'm setting it too low, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'm not cutting bushes, just tough grass that hasn't been cut in a couple of years. Is there any advice you can give me? I just got it back again. I'm afraid to try it. It's still brand new. Well, Vernon, I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 things today, and this is a fairly common problem I've seen from time to time. And we'll talk about settings to possibly stop the problem, and we'll talk about some practices you can do to stop the problem and what's causing this. First off, let's make sure that that slip clutch is set right. And this would be a really good time for you to learn how to set a slip clutch. What a slip clutch is a series of friction plates in between the PTO shaft and the gearbox. And what it's designed to do when you hit something that doesn't move or you've got something going on under the cutter is to slip. And you'll see smoke billowing out of it, and if you're not familiar with clutches, you'll think it's the end of the world. Well, just because you've got smoke coming out of it doesn't necessarily mean it's ruined. It may be just doing its job. So if you stop, let everything cool down, and try it, see what's under the cutter and try it again, you may be fine. Now, if that slip clutch is not set right, and I did a video about how to slip a slip clutch, and you need to do this every year so those clutches don't freeze up and then they won't do their job. And I'm thinking right here, somewhere up here, I'm putting a link to that video where I showed how to slip clutches. And it was on a John Deere cutter that I did that on. So watch that, and that'll help you understand how to make sure the clutches are set right. Now, the first time it happened, it could have been that the kid at the dealership that they hired out of high school that they're having slip clutches doesn't know what he's doing. And all of a sudden the clutches slipped and you had smoke coming out of them, and really maybe they were still all right. And maybe all you needed to do was just tighten up the bolts and set the slip clutch at the right place. And it was, you know, if they're set too loose, they'll slip just under any pressure. So we're going to assume now that the dealer has got the slip clutches set right, and you've burned them again. Well, I think what's happening is a couple of things. Number one, it's possible that the cutter is not set right. On a rotary cutter, the front end is going to be riding on your lower link arms on your 3-point. That's what sets a height. And you've got that set at 2.5 inches off the ground. Now let's say the back end, and this is not likely, but it's possible, but is set by the tail wheel. And let's say you've got that set where the cutter is maybe almost dragging the ground on the back. Well, what that does is that's cutting the grass and moving it forward and then cutting it again. And pretty soon you've got like the equivalent of a hay bale under that cutter, and something's got to give. And you want it to be the slip clutch, I can tell you. So first thing let's do is let's get our owner's manual out and see how much of a back to forward rake in this front of the tractor you want to have that cutter on. If it's supposed to be 2 inches lower at the front than the back, check out your tail wheel and make sure when you get that down set where you want it, that rake is there. And what that allows the cutter to do is expel material, grass and other material out the back. If you run it this way, it cuts it, throws it forward, cuts it again. Now that makes a pretty cut. I actually tried that this year on my place, and I was cutting late in the season when the stuff was pretty light. But if you cut it, throw it forward, and cut it again, it gives you a pretty cut, I can tell you. But if you're doing it in thick grass like you are, Vernon, that's going to wad up under there, and pretty soon you've got a equivalent of a hay bale underneath your cutter, and something's got to give. So let's make sure that rake is right, and set your tail wheel and your lower link arms so you're a little bit lower in the front than you are in the back, and that material is going out the back. Now, Vernon, I'm going to back up your dealer just a little bit in talking about height. That's one thing that I see a lot of people do. It's really bad in this area because we have rocks and uneven ground. When you're trying to cut 2.5 inches off the ground, in this area, your cutter would just be bouncing all over the place and cutting up rocks and plowing and doing everything like that. It's really, really hard on a cutter to mow that low. It's also hard on the grass. Now, where I live, we have cool season grasses, and most of your cool season grasses like to be mowed at a height, a minimum of 3 inches, and 4 to 4.5 to 5 inches is better. Now, you guys that are mowing your yard at 2 inches and you've got cool season grasses and you wonder why you've got weeds all the time, or you're mowing your pasture low like that and you wonder why your stand of grass is going away and you've got weeds, it's because you're mowing too low. I took a few turf management classes in college, and I found out and went home and told my dad, "You're mowing too low," because we always mowed low, and he didn't believe me. And then we hiked up that lawnmower and mowed a little higher. He thought we'd have to mow more often, and you don't. You mow the same amount, but it's better on the grass, and it chokes out the weeds when you do that. So Vernon, if you're in the south, or you have like a zoysia type grass, or some of those grasses, warm season grasses, grow lower, and they actually like to be mowed low. So you could be in an area where you do want a lower cut. But let's check that out. If you're mowing and you're accumulating all that stuff, try lifting that up to 3.5 or 4 inches. I don't think you'll dislike that cut any. I think you'll still get a pretty cut. And if you're mowing a cool season grass, it'll be a lot easier on the grasses. So let's experiment with that. And you don't have to raise it up very much for that to make a big difference in how much material is accumulating under there. And Vernon, I have in my mind you're cutting this hayfield that's not been cut, and you know how high that grass is and how lush it is. And if you're in the south where the grass is still growing and you've got grass up that, 1 or 2 feet tall and you're mowing it down 2.5 inches, that's a lot of material that's got to go somewhere. So that could be the problem. I'm going to back up your dealer on that. I don't want to upset you, but just try it and see what you think. Now finally today, I'm going to tell you Vernon's problem may be that he bought the wrong thing to cut his pasture with. If you're wanting to mow low, you probably are looking for a really nice cut, that looks like your yard. And a bush hog, or MX6 in this case, is not designed to do that. What a rotary cutter is designed to do, bush hog, brush hog, whatever you want to call it, is to slash these woody plants like some of the stuff I've got back here in the woods, and cut them off with a jagged cut and make them where maybe the water will get down in them and they'll rot, or maybe they won't come back, to kind of stunt them, but leave the grass. It's not designed to give a lawnmower type cut. If you want a lawnmower type cut in your pasture, and Vernon, this is where I'm thinking maybe you need to be, you may need a finish mower. And a finish mower that goes on the back of a tractor can give you a lawnmower like cut. And they are either rear discharge or side discharge. They've got a way of expelling the material out. And they're not these big old thick blades that you see on a rotary cutter. They're thin blades like on a lawnmower. So they're not trying to sling the grass around. They're just cutting it and letting it fall and out the back or out the side. So you may want to trade that rotary cutter in on a finish mower, or keep it and use it when you're cutting rough ground or cutting in the woods, and get a finish mower for when you're mowing in the fields that you want to keep looking nice. But I'm not sure you don't have the wrong machine there for the job. Finally today, I'll tell you, if you're burning up slip clutches, one thing that Vernon has here, and there's nothing wrong with it, he's got a pretty good sized tractor. He's got a 70 PTO horse tractor on a 6-foot cutter. Now, if I'm burning the slip clutches up in my cutter on my 40 horse tractor, I know it because the tractor tells me. The engine is bogging, the hydro's starting to slip a little bit and stop. It's not good on the tractor, but it tells me when that cutter's got more than it can handle. When you've got a 70 horse tractor with a 6-foot cutter, that tractor is going to do, it's not even going to feel that cutter back there, but the cutter may be back there bouncing around and jerking, trying to cut all that grass and get it expelled. you're not going to feel it on the tractor seat. So Vernon, three things. Check to make sure your cutter's set right, the slip clutch is set right, and the angle is set right back to front on your cutter. Number 2, lift that thing up just a little bit and try it. Number 3, you may want to trade for a finish more. And number 4, with that big a tractor, and especially if it's a cab tractor with the air conditioner running, you're going to have to watch behind you to make sure that cutter isn't just jumping around trying to eat all that grass you're feeding it. Appreciate you watching my videos. I survive on web traffic, and I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's real easy to do. Just click the mic face icon and check the bell so you're notified when I post future videos. Here's a link to my website and the Tractor Fund store with unique items for sale for the tractor owner that helps support my channel. And here's another video you might want to watch. Thanks for watching.